I'd like to call the March 5th meeting of the Gloucester County Board of Supervisors to order. Ms. Steele, will you call the roll?
Mr. Gibson?
Here.
Dr. Orth? Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Hutson?
Here.
Mr. Chriscoe?
Here.
Mr. Bazzani?
Here.
Mr. Nicosia?
Here.
All present.
Would you all join me in the invocation, the Pledge of Allegiance? The invocation is going to be with Pastor Chris Grella of Newington Baptist Church.
Let us pray. Father God, we thank you so much, Lord, for the opportunity we have to be here this evening. God, we thank you for our leaders. We thank you for our local government here. God, we pray that you would continue to speak to them, Lord, that you would continue to unify them as they lead effectively here in our community. And Lord, I thank you for each person that's a part of our community, part of our county. Lord, that you would continue to allow us to live together in unity and love as we continue to seek you in this world. We thank you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Now I'd like for Maddie Bowen to come forward. She's a fourth grader at Abingdon Elementary School. She's going to lead us in the pledge. And we're proud to have Maddie represent Abingdon this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Maddie. I know. Next item is approval of the minutes from October 4th and October 17th.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is the adoption of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is matters presented by the board. Dr. Orth.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I had an interesting conversation with a constituent that had a situation that may have paralleled Mr. Bazzani's constituent with regard to opting out one of the meters for Dominion. She said she was able to opt out, but it turned out in the time it took to opt out in the billing process and the way they billed, she was billed like for 3 bills in a row with a bill that was over around $1,000. And she knew what happened, but she was concerned that there may be other people that might be opting out and having the same issue and not understanding that if they opt out, that their bills may be significantly higher, like 2 or 3 bills in a row. So it's maybe something that you all might want to be aware of, your constituents touch base with you. I mean, she was okay with it. She was happy. She plans for her electricity bill, but she was concerned that there may be some people out there that don't understand that have opted out and have bills that, you know, defy a rational explanation for being really high than normal.
I had a constituent with the same issue, but this was a retiree. She lives by herself. Her bills were usually between $85 and $95 a month. She received 2 or 3 consecutive bills, well over $350. I think we got that resolved through Dominion Power, so that's been resolved. But she may have to, you know, do
but
the
I think
same
it's
avenue.
something that for people that are opting out or get bills that are excessive, there may be a good explanation for that, and I'm glad your constituent got that resolved.
Mr. Chriscoe.
Thank you, Mr. Hutson. Just to let my fellow board members know, the MPA was due to meet last week on the 29th of February. Unfortunately, unforeseen scheduling conflicts kept us from being able to meet. We weren't going to have a quorum, so I'm working on getting that meeting rescheduled for economic development, the Middle Peninsula Alliance. Working on getting that rescheduled for this month. I've just got to play with my schedule to make sure I don't double book myself for one of those meetings. So just keeping you guys abreast of what we're trying to get going back up there.
Next item is, anybody else? Next item is county administrator items.
Yes, I have a couple of items. I'd like to thank all the local restaurants that participated in Restaurant Week last week. I know many of us enjoyed going out and having extra special discounts and things. I think it was a great success for our first year of doing it, and I believe there were 18 or 19 restaurants that participated. Every household or every mailbox in the county was sent one of these postcards, and I wanted to make sure, and you know, to give another plug for this. We used to use a system called Code Red, And it would alert us during storms, and also could be used for hurricane announcements and things like that. And we had about 7,000 people signed up. And we switched to Be Alert for a number of reasons, and that meant that we had to get everybody to sign up from scratch. We could not carry over. And we've been working on this for the last couple of years, and we've now reached over 4,000 numbers. But it says to me there's a lot of people who have not signed up. And it could be that some people have gotten rid of their home phones and only need to have a cell phone now or something. And so that might be less numbers. But please help spread the word that we would like our citizens to sign up for the Be Alert calls. And then also in today's mail, everyone should have received, and this is one of the things that helps us get our lower insurance rate with the CRS program. This is the 2024 Flood Awareness Guide, and it's got very good information as we are having Flood Awareness Week, March 10th through the 16th. So please take a look. And the last thing, I would just like to remind everybody about the Clean Gloucester Day days on the 22nd and 23rd of this month. Thank you.
All right. Next item is scheduled presentations. If Mark Dutton would come forward, we'd like to thank him for his service on Board of Social Services.
Good.
Since Mark's up here, I'm not Tommy Dutton. I can get through here. It's a resolution of appreciation for Mark Dutton for service on the Gloucester County Board of Social Services. Whereas Mark Dutton first began his service on the Gloucester Social Service Board in March 2016 as an Abingdon representative, and whereas Mr. Dutton has since continuously served 2 full terms, a total of 8 years on Social Services Board, and whereas Mr. Dutton served as chair of the Social Services Board for 2 of his 8 years on the board. Whereas Mr. Dutton devoted his time on the Social Services Board to ensuring citizens receive the services provided by the department in the most professional and fiscally responsible manner possible. And whereas in his capacity as Social Services Board member, he served on various committees and subcommittees to aid in carrying out the duties and Social Services Board. And whereas Mr. Dutton played a key role in establishing much needed services in the community for citizens served by the agency. And whereas Mr. Dutton demonstrated his professionalism in leading and serving the Social Services Department through change and growth to an increase in the quality of services provided. And whereas Mr. Dutton maintained a consistent pledge to ensure adequate staffing levels when caseloads were very high, his concern for staff morale, their ability to preserve, was undying, and all while demonstrating his appreciation for the work performed. And whereas Mr. Dutton fiscal understanding of various funding streams to include federal, state, local funds has been invaluable in his work for the Social Services Board. And whereas Mr. Dutton has great compassion for the well-being of the citizens of Gloucester and has demonstrated this through his time on the Social Services Board. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Gloucester County Board of Supervisors, Gloucester County, Virginia, undersigned, expresses its appreciation to Mr. Mark Dutton for his services to the Gloucester County Department of Social Services and the citizens of Gloucester County. Thank you. Next item is a broadband update. Mr. Beach.
Good evening. I've just got a quick update here on that, on the broadband and fixed wireless. We met with Vadi on February 8th, and I talked with Greg Reed from Open Broadband yesterday, and since that time, they have actually had no other sign-ups for the broadband in the Vadi area or the extended county. Still working on a couple locations that they can't reach with the signal, trying to get some poles in people's yards there to to acquire that signal and get them service. Open Broadband also has 2 applications open with Verizon to attach equipment to the Bethel Peasley monopole there and the one at Thousand Trails. Open Broadband is hoping that those 2, especially the one at Thousand Trails, is going to get complete coverage for the body residents there and the northeastern part of the county, which would, Mr. Gibson, would be your area there. And they're also hoping that that tower at Thousand Trails is going to allow them to not have to install the tower at Harcum, which would be a bit of a savings since we're going on an extra pole there at Thousand Trails. Both the towers are being evaluated by Verizon. We've had a application with the one for Bethel Peasley in for a while, and then Open Broadband sent their application for the Thousand Trails in February. Verizon is not being easy on them. They have about a 5 to 6 month review period for those 2 towers, which started around February. And again, in my discussion with Open Broadband on Monday, they're indicating that they're throwing some more hurdles at them as far as what equipment they can put up there and when and how high, but they are trying to work out all of those as quickly as possible. We have 2 remaining towers that are going to be in the extended Gloucester County area. That would be Brenton, Becky's, and Achilles. If we don't put the tower up at Harcum, and that's covered by Thousand Trails, we would have 2 towers left to put up. That'd be Brenton, Becky's. And those are awaiting the MOUs from the county to be reviewed and submitted and reviewed. And then with those 2 towers, one thing that I have been trying to push Open Broadband is to go ahead and start working on other areas of the county while we're waiting on body restrictions and towers. And they did say that they're going to start working on the Gloucester Point and Page water towers soon to start lighting those up and getting people around that area service. So that's the update. I wish I had a lot better news than that, but that's where we are.
Any questions for Mr. Beach? Mr. Gibson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Beach, for
Yeah.
the update, and I really appreciate you coming before us regularly and keeping us posted on progress. As you know, I've been pretty frustrated with the pace of the implementation of Open Broadband. It's been years now, and I'm not pointing the finger at you. I know you're doing your best to manage the situation and be a liaison and push them forward. So thank you for your excellent work. My question is, in your discussions with Open Broadband, one of the concerns that I've raised and some of the other board members have raised is the lack of communication from Open Broadband. And months ago, I advised the Open Broadband representative that I live in Petsworth. We don't have broadband out there. I signed up when it first came out, and that was over 2 years ago. And I've never received any communication from the company. And I still haven't received any communication from the company. And I heard your report that they haven't had any signups, and just a basic business practice, you want to communicate with your market, and particularly those who've signed up and expressed an interest in the service. And so in your discussions with them, if you could convey that the importance of communicating with those who have signed up, and also week. I haven't seen any marketing, and granted I can only tell you what I've seen, but I don't see anything on social media. I don't see anything in the newspaper. I haven't heard anything on the radio. So I don't think the word is getting out to the citizens that this is hopefully coming on very soon. So I think that's another component they need to work on. It's just very important to the Petsworth district with so many people without broadband, and moving from Open Broadband to other providers. I know there was some movement to get Verizon involved with the county. Do you have any update on that, or that you can share with us? Or
There are 2 grants that we applied for at the beginning of or at the end of last year. It involved both Cox and Verizon. And that probably will not be reported from the state until May.
okay, so we're expecting some news
Yes,
by May.
yes, we will have some news by
Because
May.
that would be fantastic to have a competitor for Cox, give people options. and hopefully decrease the prices in our area. So I really appreciate everything you're doing to move that Verizon project forward and pursuing those grants. So thank you again for being here and for the update.
Absolutely, and I will say I share your frustration, and I do request information from them every week regarding the information that you're looking for, because
I know you do.
You haven't received it, and I haven't either,
My
so, yeah.
concerns rest with the company and not with you. Thank you
No,
again for the update.
absolutely.
Dr. Orth.
Can you tell us about the grants to Verizon and Cox? What do they entail? Is that essentially, will they be competitors with open broadband, or is this another avenue to get fixed wireless or whatever?
This is an avenue for fiber. Yes.
Any more questions, comments?
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Beach.
absolutely.
We'll move to the citizen comment period. Please come forward, state your name, state your magisterial district, and limit your talk to 3 minutes, please.
Good evening, Ms. Steele, board members, Mr. Wilmot, county staff. I'm from the Abingdon Magisterial District, but I'm here tonight representing Gloucester Volunteer Fire and Rescue Squad. And some of my colleagues from Gloucester and Abingdon are here, support me as well. We're here to ask tonight that you fully fund both departments for the upcoming budget request for the 2025-26 budget cycle. But before I get started with my planned comments, I have an issue that I must address. Last night during y'all's work session, Mr. Bazzani made a statement I need to rebut. He stated that Gloucester Volunteer Fire and Rescue Squad had requested a study to see where we were supposed to put the new Station 1. That is not correct, sir. Ms. Steele, Mr. Hutson, Mr. Chriscoe, Mr. Wilmot, Ms. Callaway were all in the room. That was a request for future need as the county population continues to grow over the years, where future fire stations would go. Having said that, Gloucester did a study over 20 years ago. We had already secured a site at Owl Trap for a future station. We know it's another station should go between us and Abingdon Station 5. I just don't see why you need to go for another study. You say you don't have the money for the budget. Why do you need to spend $50,000 to do something that we already know you need? It's going to need down the road. Don't need it today, but you will need it in the future as the population increases. But I just don't understand, like I say, why you got to continue on with that effort. But back in 2008, when I became chief of Gloucester Volunteer Fire and Rescue Squad, I came to the first board. I don't remember who was even on it now, but I have told each board and every subsequent board since then, at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, about the need to have a new Station 1. And other than having the land that we own on Main Street for the new station, and that's when if we build a station, that make no mistake about it, that's where the building is going, on Main Street. We bought the land for that purpose. It's the most centrally located. We've done study after study as far as the call volume, and that's where it's going to be. But we're no closer to having that station right now than we were in 2008, other than the fact we've got that land. But shame on you board members for letting us get in this situation. We've got a building that's way outdated, and we've got 2 new pumpers on a rescue truck that we ordered thinking we were having a new building to put them in. Now, we know that's not going to happen, and we don't have room to get them in the building. We've got to make alterations to get them in the building. So there's going to be more money thrown away. So where does it stop? We've got to come to a happy medium. We've got to come here and do what we've got to do to serve the citizens of Gloucester. We're not trying to take advantage of anybody. We're trying to lead the way into the future. And without your help, it ain't going to happen. I'm not sure that today, if y'all allotted what you initially suggested, I'm not sure that we could even build a building with what money we've already got in hand due to inflation. It's a crisis that we're in. Abingdon's got needs as well as we do. But you've got to stop and smell the roses. I've invited every one of you to our stations, and only a few of you have come.
Clemens, your time is, could you summarize, please? Your time's up.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I'm asking for your full support. I'm asking you to rethink your ability to build a new station. I'm asking you to look at any alternative plan, financial plan you can come up with to help get us moving in the right direction. We'll be willing to make a concession on this year's budget request by $227,000. And mainly we're doing that because of keep being asked every year about charging for EMS services. We've started the process, but I think it's going to probably be January of 2025 at the earliest before we can implement it. We need to get that revenue stream started before we can give up any more money. Hopefully by then we get revenue stream established, get funds coming in. But I'm asking you, as the fire chief and a citizen, to do the right thing and help Gloucester Volunteer Fire and Rescue and Abingdon Volunteer Fire and Rescue to meet our goals and so we can move in the future, serve the citizens of the county the best we possibly can. Thank you for that time.
Good evening, Board. Ms. Steele, Mr. Wilmot. I'm Jack Moore. I live in the York District. Been a resident in Gloucester for over 37 years, tax-paying resident in Gloucester for 37 years. And I'm also the current president to Gloucester High School Crew Team Booster Club, which is a nonprofit. We are running into a situation that we need your assistance. Captain Sinclair Landing stands on a precipice of change, and as stewards of our shared space, it is imperative that we engage in open, transparent dialogue before making any decisions that will shape its future. Establishing a town hall discussion on the proposed changes to Captain Sinclair Landing is not merely a procedural formality. It is a moral imperative. Our community's voice deserves to be heard, considered, and valued in matters that affect our collective space. By providing a platform for discussion, we honor the principles of democracy and ensure that the decisions made reflect the genuine needs and desires of those whom they impact the most, the residents. Moreover, a town hall discussion fosters inclusivity, inviting diverse perspectives to the table. Our community is comprised of individuals with unique experiences, passions, and insights. By convening a forum where these voices can be shared and heard, we enrich the decision-making process, leading to outcomes that are more comprehensive and reflective of our community's rich tapestry. Let us not overlook the significance of Captain Sinclair's Landing in the fabric of our community. It's not merely a space of recreation, but a symbol of our shared identity and history. Thus, it's paramount that we proceed with caution, wisdom, and above all, respect for the voices of those you serve. I urge you to heed this plea and convene a town hall discussion on the proposed changes to Captain Sinclair Landing. Let us come together as a community, united by our love for this space, to shape its future in a manner that honors its legacy and serves its needs of all. I thank you for your attention in this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Good evening. My name is Keith Wood. I live in the Abingdon District. Last night, a board member publicly stated that the fire department was the holdup on building the new fire station because the fire department wanted to do a study on where to build it. This could not be further from the truth. The fire department is steadfast on needing to build the fire station at the new location on Main Street. The fire department is not doing a study to determine that. The delay is in the funding of the construction. The study is something the county wants to do. This is another example of this board member misleading the public on information. I watched the Just Say No to the Referendum meetings and how this board member made statements that would lead someone to think that no tax increase would be needed to pay for the fire department construction. The first bullet on one of this member's newsletter states, quote, in bold letters, a true fact, Gloucester can pay for a firehouse today without the need of raising taxes or the need for a referendum, unquote. I don't see how that can be interpreted any other way. Was this statement fact or fiction? It's looking fiction to me. I also read on social media another board member making comments before the referendum that the tax increase by the referendum was not needed because the county could do, quote, alternative funding. These two members gave the public the perception that no tax increase was needed to fund both the fire department's request for building construction. And now here we are. The referendum was voted down, and the county has no money to fund the construction. So what happened? I think the public deserves to know where the money is, or did a few of the board members deceive the public with the statements they made? After the referendum was voted down, I was fully expecting that one of these two members would present a resolution to fund these projects with the money that they said the county had, but have not heard that request from either of them. After all, they repeatedly stated that they had the ability to make the payments and there could be alternate funding. Now, because of the statements made last night, it doesn't appear that the fire department projects will happen without a tax increase. As has happened in every year past when projects are put off, the cost only increase, which costs the taxpayers even more money in the long run. This is not fiscal responsibility. You keep putting off the inevitable, which only drives up costs, which will lead to an even higher tax increase. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Dr. Jeff Buswell, and I've resided in the Ware District for 18 years. I'm a parent of a rower for Gloucester Rowing Association, the high school club, and also vice president of GRA. I'm speaking tonight in all of those capacities, and also for the public in general, who I think should be afforded the opportunity to know about the proposed changes at Sinclair's Landing. You may have heard about some of these concerns. As GRA officers, we were asked to attend a meeting in January with the other parties involved. We had not been advised beforehand as to the extent of the proposed changes at Sinclair's Landing. For example, during the meeting, we were advised that a private, for-profit company is coming in and would be needing to use the facilities 5 days a week, sometimes on Saturdays, for 6 to 7 hours a day, in order to help facilitate outpatient counseling of patients from our local VA. And that they also needed our practice schedule, as that they did not want to have the rowers there and they couldn't be there at the same time as the patients. We were told that really they did not want to have this meeting with us until they, and I quote, had all their ducks in a row. They said that everything was already approved and that we needed to adjust to it. After listening to the entire presentation, we had further questions about how it could possibly accommodate these treatment programs, our rowers, and also the general public, who should be able to have unfettered access, public access, to these amenities, which is why the Middle Peninsula Public Access Authority was created in the first place. We respectfully request a public hearing or meeting, if you'd like to call it that, in order for the public to be more adequately informed about the proposed changes at Sinclair's Landing. We realize that this is a property administered by the Middle Peninsula PAA, but it is also within the confines of Gloucester County. And according to Section 3 of the PAA operating agreement, and I quote, the authority shall not undertake any project in any jurisdiction without the approval of the governing body of that jurisdiction. According to a state official I spoke with yesterday, this means that we as a county may still have an opportunity to further discuss this matter with the public, and I believe we should. I respectfully request for such a meeting, and we were also advised by the other parties involved in this matter that they too would welcome such an opportunity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Buswell. Dr. Buswell.
Good evening, Board. My name is Daniel Hogg. I'm resident of Gloucester County my whole life, and I live in the York District. I'm just here to add comment and support to what you've already heard from Jack Moore and Dr. Jeff Buswell regarding Sinclair's Landing and its potential future usage. Gloucester crew, Gloucester Rowing, is a tremendous asset to the county and to our students and in the school system. The board is very small and made up of a group of volunteers that keep that crew team alive and to the benefit of our students. We're a fully volunteer board. And our main goal in life is to continue to make sure that high school crew team is supported financially to support the kids and to keep that activity moving forward. But predominantly in the board's discussions is to make sure that we maintain the safety and security of those children when they're participating in the support. And with some of the proposed concerns that we've got around the future of Sinclair Landings, this has just been preeminent in our minds. And we feel that if it's within the board's purview, have an open forum and ultimate jurisdiction over Sinclair's Landing, we would ask and request that the board have a public hearing to help determine what the future of that space is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawk. Would anyone else like to come forward and speak?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mike Hutchins from Abingdon Volunteer Fire and Rescue. Just come here tonight to ask for your support. I'm from the Gloucester Point District, but your support for our upcoming budgets and help us be able to continue to answer calls and meet the need of citizens throughout the county, as well as support for Gloucester Fire Rescue and their budget, and be able for them also to increase the budget for them and so they can continue to meet their needs. So we look forward to working with y'all in any way we can. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Anyone else? All right, we'll close citizen comment period. No. I've already talked. Did you? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Bazzani.
Thank you for your comments, Chief Clements. Just a real quick thing. You've got no better supporter than me, the Gloucester County Fire Department. So I just want you to know that.
All right, we'll move to the public hearings. We'll wait a second. Are y'all leaving? Okay. Next item is a public hearing to consider an amendment to the zoning map to reclassify 0.75 acre zone by the William D. Ferry Senior Revocable Trust to remove proffered conditions. Ms. Ducey Ortiz.
Good evening. As you said, over here to look at this rezoning on Main Street. The property is owned, as Mr. Hudson said, by William D. Ferry and the Revocable Living Trust. It's 0.75 acres located along the Business 17 South, north of Main Street Landing subdivision. It's currently no active use of the property. It is assessed as a commercial building, and the request is to remove the current proffers on the property that were voluntarily offered and approved through rezoning Z9405. The idea is to leave the underlying B2 village business zoning. The surrounding land uses include residential structures zoned SC1 across Business Route 17, residential structures not shown on the picture slide further west of the wooded area, a lot about 250 to 350 deep. And then west is Main Street Landing subdivision, and then the south is a residential structure, which is also zone B2, and then north is the Andrews Funeral Home, which is also zone B2. So the proffers originally approved in conjunction with rezoning Z 9405. They were approved back then because the B2 zoning district didn't exist. So it was rezoned to B1, which is our general business district, which is similar to what you'd see along 17. Back then, they were working on the zoning ordinance, is my understanding. I wasn't here at the time, but, and so they would, we have several properties on Main Street that would proffer different uses and different criteria that would possibly be considered in the B2 zoning that was being developed at the time. The applicant doesn't have any proposed development intent for the property. They just feel that this would make their property more marketable, and as I go through the proffers, you'll understand why. The B2, as you know, is our village business district, and the intent is to provide for the orderly growth and development of selected retail, sales, office, service, and public use establishments. Uses are primarily oriented towards central business concentrations, and they're designed to foster village-scale walkable communities. So in our comprehensive plan on the left is our, in our main comprehensive plan, and then our comprehensive plan also refers to our village plan. So the areas are recommended to be village business district to support this type of commercial use. And then in the Gloucester village plan, it talks about being being a, sorry, I lost my place. Village Boulevard mixed use. So because it isn't necessarily the walkable area, Main Street is more of a boulevard use. But if you recall, we do have a proposal to put a shared use path along that, and so try to connect that to the rest of the courthouse area. So I'm just going to go through the proffers that are on the property. As you may recall, proffers run with the land, and so these proffers will stay on the property unless the board changes them through the rezoning process. So the first proffer is only one sign will be placed on the property and will be placed at grade and will not exceed 60 square feet. This is actually more permissive than our current zoning ordinance, so if this proffer is removed, they will be required to meet the same requirements as other signage in the B2 district. This proffer is that it will contain, keep the large trees on the site, will remain in place. This would definitely more restrictive than our current ordinance. We don't have any requirements for not removing trees. We do have requirements associated with erosion and sediment control, and actually tree removal might be necessary to provide for a future use like parking or a stormwater basin. So there currently are no wetlands or RPA on the site, and they could use the preservation of existing vegetation to offset any erosion and sediment control requirements. But that proffer is definitely more restrictive than our current B2 or current requirements in the county. The requirement for an entrance to build to VDOT standards, that is a standard requirement on all development in the county if it's a site plan. If it's not a site plan, then the existing entrance could continue to be used. But typically, if there's a site plan, we would require the entrance to meet VDOT standards. Proffer 4 is no heavy construction or land clearing equipment will be stored on the property. The B2 underlying zoning would not allow that, and it would not be allowed as a home-based business. But if it was, the property was going to be used for residential, then you could store heavier equipment if it was associated with your personal use. In our B2, we do allow homes to, if it's on an existing lot of record, it could also be used for a house. It doesn't have to be used for a business. The proffer 5, I'm not going to read all these, but they limited the uses, and several of the uses are more restrictive than our current B2 zoning, and then some would not be permitted under the B2 zoning. So mainly it was meant to kind of continue the village scale type of development and not allow things like automotive services and those kinds of things in the village. So in the staff report, and I'm not going to go over this too detailed, we looked at different type of uses, and the majority are permitted in the zoning ordinance, but not in the proffer statement. So 30 of them would be permitted. So it would allow more uses to be on the site than what is currently proffered. But then there's some uses that would not be permitted that are in the proffer statement, like a general hospital. So the application to remove the proffers are consistent with the surrounding properties and the region. And although the proffer statement allows some more uses, they are no greater than other properties within the B2 district. There's really not a lot of difference between the current proffered conditions and the underlying zoning regulations, and typically the underlining zoning would be more restrictive than the proffered requirements. So staff proposed that the Planning Commission forward the rezoning application to the board with a recommendation of approval. It's consistent with the village plan. It furthers village scale mixed-use designation, and is supported by both the courthouse plan and the comprehensive plan. At the Planning Commission, we did have several citizens from Main Street Landing come. They wanted to see a larger buffer than what is currently required by our zoning ordinance. Our zoning ordinance, when you have a non-residential use adjacent to a residential, you can either go down to 5 feet with a fence or 30 feet. So they were hoping to get a 30-foot buffer. And then they wanted to restrict certain uses like craft manufacturing and light manufacturing, which are allowed by right. Light manufacturing has no external impacts, and so that is a permitted use in our B2 district. We asked the applicant would they be interested in voluntarily proffering those, and he was not interested in doing that. So the Planning Commission moved forward with unanimously forwarding it to the board with a recommendation for approval. I don't believe the applicant is here, so if you have any questions for me before you open the public hearing, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Let's open the public hearing, citizen comments. Ms. Cronin, do we have any calls on this? I didn't think so. All right, any question, let's close the citizen comment, let's close the public hearing. Any questions for Ms. Ducey Ortiz? It's an ordinance on page 30.
Mr. Chair, I make the motion that we approve the ordinance as presented.
Second.
You pick it. Ms. Steele, will you poll the board?
Dr. Orth?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Hutson?
Yes.
Mr. Chriscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bazzani?
Yes.
Mr. Nicosia?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next public hearing is a public hearing to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 16, Section 16-88 taxation to change the occurrence of the assessment for reassessment and to change the effective date of the next reassessment. Mr. Thomas.
Where's the? Oh, there we go. Thank you. Good evening through you, Mr. Hutson. To the board, Ms. Steele, Attorney Wilmot, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you this evening. In 2022, the Code of Virginia was amended by the General Assembly to permit reassessments to occur in the counties of Virginia every 3 years. This legislative change is owing in part to the request of the Gloucester County Board of Supervisors, which first discussed this item on its legislative agenda in 2022. We now have come full circle as we consider this evening an ordinance amending the Gloucester County Code to the legislative option identified in Virginia Code 58.1.3252, which will effectively change the general assessment and reassessment of real estate from 2 years to every 3 years. This provision is contingent upon a majority vote of the county's Board of Supervisors. As the assessor of Gloucester County, I appear this evening to give evidence in support of this amendment and to show that it is consistent with good assessment practice. In our previous review of this topic, I began with this slide, which identifies the reassessment cycle of jurisdictions surrounding Gloucester County. We see that urban jurisdictions, such as those represented here in magenta and green, are more frequently reassessed, typically every year or every other year. Suburban and rural jurisdictions, such as our immediate neighbors to the north and east, and represented here in blue and brown, typically reassess every 4 to 6 years. As we consider Gloucester County, which is roughly 55% suburban, 45% rural, it appears that we seem to fit somewhere in the middle. And in that light, a reassessment cycle of every 3 years would seem to make sense. I believe there are 3 good reasons to consider moving the frequency of the reassessment cycle to every 3 years in Gloucester County. First, sales database. As you know, reassessment is all about sales and sales ratios. Sales ratios determine the level of assessment, and the Code of Virginia requires that certain levels of assessment be maintained. This is why we do reassessment. A larger sales file helps the assessor zero in on exactly where the market is trending for a particular property. Additionally, the assessor is better equipped to detect trends and patterns within neighborhood subsets, as well as other criteria used to calibrate valuation tables. A larger sales file is especially helpful when assessing property types that exist in fewer numbers, such as commercial and industrial properties, waterfront homes, waterfront estates, and vacant properties of all types. Reason number 2, Gloucester County real estate itself. As noted previously, the jurisdictions that do reassessment every year or every other year are typically urban or suburban. They're comprised of multiple neighborhoods that are similar with respect to their housing stock, and so their sales database can, with proper locational adjustments, be applied across a broad range of properties. Gloucester County's housing stock and property types vary greatly. With our creeks and rivers and the neighborhoods that surround them, a great many variables can affect the market value. Great care and discernment must be employed by the local appraiser when attempting to locate comparable property sales and adjust appropriately to the subject property. Likewise, so must the county assessor employ that same care and discernment when developing pricing schedules and land values for the great variety of property types that exist in a county such as ours, with this mixture of suburban and rural neighborhoods, large waterfront estates, smaller waterfront communities, mobile home communities, agricultural farms, large forested tracts, all of which challenge the assessor with locational adjustments. Likewise, Gloucester County features a great variety of housing stock. In order to develop a solid sales database for this degree of variety, it only stands to reason that time becomes the friend or the foe of the assessor trying to develop a quality assessment product that is fair, equitable, and defensible. A third reason that a 3-year cycle is better suited to Gloucester County centers around the assessment industry standards. The International Association of Assessing Officer Standards allow for a 20-month review of sales data to assist in determining assessments. This is the most useful standard for rural districts, particularly during sluggish markets when there are fewer sales to work from. And I would say that's an or also. In other words, rural districts or when there's a slowdown in the market. The reason why can be better appreciated when we consider the specific timeline of a reassessment project. I developed a couple slides the last time, and I don't think they hit home very well. Hopefully this one will help on this particular reason. In order to complete a reassessment project in a timely manner, assessment reviews should begin no later than July preceding the date of value, which is January 1. Under the current biennial reassessment cycle, represented here in gold, if reviews begin in July and we track back 24 months to build the sales file, we are analyzing sales that took place prior to the date of value of the previous assessment, shown here as 1/1/23. Now, in and of itself, this is not a problem necessarily for the assessor, more than it is simply a preference. So to reduce the potential for confusion by the general public when a portion of the sales data that is used as a part of the overall analysis for the reassessment predates the data value for the prior reassessment. In a 3-year cycle, this would not be an issue. The sales analysis timeline represented here by the blue band, which would include only sales that occurred after the prior reassessment. In other words, we'd be starting the reassessment with a clean slate of sales data, and I hope that you can appreciate this preference. As county assessor, it is my recommendation that the Gloucester County proceed with a change in the county code and move to a real property reassessment of 3 years. This concludes my presentation. I'd be more than welcome to take any of your questions.
Any questions right now for Ms. Thomas? All right, let's open the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak on this topic? All All right, we'll close the public comment period. Any questions for Ms. Thomas now? Mr. Thomas now. There's an, oh, excuse me, Mr. Gibson.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you for your presentation. It was very well presented, very clear, easy to understand, so thank you for your hard work.
You're welcome.
There's an ordinance on page 89.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Steele?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Hutson?
Yes.
Mr. Chriscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bazzani?
Yes.
Mr. Nicosia?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Dr. Orth? Motion carries.
Okay, next item is another public hearing. That's a public hearing to consider an ordinance to amend Chapter 19, Water, Sewers, and Sewer to add a fee to user accounts and to revise certain fees. Rates and charges. Ms. Legg.
Good evening. I'm actually glad to be standing up here now. Yes, tonight you have a public hearing to potentially adjust some fees with public utility rates effective July 1 of 2024. So first what I'll do is I'll give you an overview of how we got to this point of adjusting some rates. If you recall, staff presented a long-term utilities plan to you all and the public in September and November. It addressed many operational and capital items, and it included an extensive review of all revenue and expenses and how best to leverage the funds that are coming in to meet some of these needs. Monthly user rates have not been adjusted since 2013. At the end of 2023, the Public Utilities Advisory Committee reviewed the long-term plan and suggested a more aggressive approach than what staff have ultimately recommended to you. FYI, there are currently 5219 water accounts and 1957 sewer accounts. So the only thing that we're going to talk about tonight is FY25, which includes a monthly equipment fee and a sewer rate tier restructure. The rest of those items in light gray are just as background information as part of the 10-year utilities plan. So looking ahead, what the plan might be for additional rate increases, but that is not the topic of tonight's public hearing. So first is the monthly equipment fee. This would assess a new $2.50 per month fee to every account. It would not be one for water, one for sewer. It would be one per account. Again, this would be effective July 1. And this really goes to support the advanced metering infrastructure, the AMI system that's coming later this year. So this would cover the annual maintenance cost for the program, which is budgeted at $110,000 per year with roughly a 5% increase each year. The revenue from this will cover those costs. Just as a reminder, AMI is the system that we are in the process of implementing. Right now, our crew spends 5 to 7 days hand reading every meter, with the exception of the radio reads that we do have that they have to drive by sometimes twice to get the reading. AMI will allow the meters to communicate with software in our office, so we will have real-time usage information, allowing us to catch leaks sooner and allowing us to bill accurately and faster.
Will this be in every household that has?
Yes.
water and sewer?
Yes.
Every household?
Yes. So the other change to the ordinance would be a restructure of the current sewer rates. For your reference, this is what our current sewer tiers look like right now. We have 7. 92% of our customers are in tiers 1 through 3. That's about 1,800 of the 1957 customers. This is what the proposed rates will look like. It essentially removes the top 4 tiers, and now any customer account over 4,000 gallons would be charged at that tier 3 rate. The revenue that this would generate in 1 year is estimated to be about $102,000. So how does this impact people, and who does this impact? I personally pulled the data for the last 12 months, and it is up to date because we have just read meters. So for the past 12 months, I took every sewer account and looked at, are there anomalies? So if for some reason you had 1 month that was over 8,000 gallons, which pushes you into that tier 4, that could have just been your kids are home from college, if you're like me and you wait till the last minute to do all of your laundry, that sort of thing. I was also able to pull out the accounts that maybe had leaks or whatnot. So what I was looking for were accounts that would be consistently impacted by the rate restructure. And that was 176 as of the past 12 months, accurate up until last week. So that is 20 single-family residential units. That is 30 multifamily residential units, and 126 other. So those are your government buildings, your schools, healthcare, businesses, industry.
Dr. Okay, so these numbers, and I appreciate you're going back to get these data, but they're based on water flow from inaccurate meters, correct? So it's possible that these numbers may be accurate, inaccurate, up or down, we don't know. And
correct.
We won't know until the AMIs go in.
There is some possibility of fluctuation, and that was also accounted for in the budget. The AMI company has told us that they typically see about a 10% increase when the meters go in, and that's just across the system, so not necessarily everyone will see a 10% increase. So of those 176 accounts that are impacted, this is the breakdown of where they fall in those top 4 tiers that we are recommending reducing or removing. So what does that, everybody wants to know what it looks like by the dollar. So 40 of those accounts will see a monthly impact of $2.40 to $3.30. Those are almost all single-family residential and multifamily residential. I believe there are maybe 3 or 4 that are in that industry category. 120 of those accounts will see an impact from $6 to $79.12. That is multifamily residential, so your apartments, condos, duplexes, that sort of thing. And then the 16 at the top tier are your industry, your healthcare, your biggest users. They are impacted at all 3 levels. There are no residential units with this data that are impacted at that higher tier. Those are roughly, the 40 accounts are roughly 6% increase. The 16 accounts at the high end are over 20%. But this does not affect individual users.
Dr. Orth.
So, and again, this gets back to the AMIs. So according to what I understand, the AMIs, people will be able to see their water. And so
Correct.
They may know that they can go in and say, gosh, I'm getting close to that magic number, and I can reduce my water flow. Or they may say, hey, I might want to buy a water saver toilet or washing machine. But again, the numbers are good, but it may not really be the correct numbers once all the AMIs get fully implemented.
Correct. And the AMI implementation.
The AMIs are going to be great. I think people are going to be able to see the water flow. I think it's going to be great for the department. I think that, again, everything you've done is great. I think we just need to understand that all these are predicated on our water flow meters that are many
Right
ways not working good.
Right, and the AMI software that will come with the system will allow for that customer portal, so any user can go in at any time and check their usage rates. And again, will also allow our staff to be notified of a leak a whole lot sooner than right now, where we're only reading meters once a month.
Mr. Bazzani.
Ms. Legg, I might have missed this, but what does 40 accounts mean? Is that 40 different homes? What does 40 accounts mean?
It's 40 users. It's not necessarily a home. It could be a business. It's a meter.
We have more than that in the county using this water, right? and sewer.
These are These numbers are only being impacted by the rate restructure.
No. These are the ones that would be affected by the new rate structure that's being presented tonight.
Okay, I understand.
Yes, the other roughly 1,800 accounts will not be affected. Unless, and let me add this caveat, again, everything is based on consumption. So if for some reason in the summer you decided to fill your pool, you're going to have used more water and we're going to charge you for that.
Just one.
Mr. Chriscoe.
The numbers, the monthly bill impact numbers, that is on top of the 250 equipment fee, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
So the proposed amendment to the ordinance, I spliced it because the resolution that you have lists every single fee, charge, and rate that you approve. So this adds the $2.50 a month equipment fee and then removes the top 4 tiers of the monthly sewer rate. So next steps would be the public hearing tonight, and then of course if you approve, staff will work on a public education campaign.
All right.
Mr. Chair, board members, Ms. Legg and I were talking earlier about this, and just to reiterate about that these are not residential properties that are looking at those potential higher bills. Most of them are businesses that have customers that if this becomes a burden to them, they're going to turn around and pass that fee on. They at least have that option to do that. Where if we were looking at raising residential situations, those people would be hurt further. But I think it's important to understand that these are businesses and this is the cost of doing business, and I know all of the admin staff completely supports and finance completely supports this. As you know, our situation with utilities and being so far behind, this is, I think, a very reasonable approach.
Okay.
Any questions for Ms. Legg? All right, we'll open the public hearing. Would anyone like to come forward and talk on this public hearing?
Nathan Brown from Ware District. We need to change the sewer rates for years. But the problem with the sewer rates, we're only just making a small change, which is not going to generate enough revenue to keep the sewer system operating. One of the main problems with the sewer system is the bottom rate. The bottom rate is $11.17. A lot of other localities, you got to remember, we don't treat the sewer. All we do is collect it, and it goes over to HRSD, and they take care of treating it. We have to maintain and have the sewer system there for everybody all the time, and there's very little variable cost in running the sewer system. Basically, the electric bill goes up, more repairs, more use it, but basically it's a fixed cost to have the sewer system there. Well, we need everybody to contribute to operating the sewer system. If you go to other localities like York County, City of Pocosin, they charge residential users a flat fee from like $25. I haven't checked it recently. It used to be $25 to $30. You'll get a sewer bill, that's it. Because the sewer has to be available. It doesn't matter if, what's the big deal? If you use 5,000 gallons or you use 6,000 gallons, it makes no difference to the sewer system what you're using it for. But we need to raise the bottom rate too, because it's no use to have a customer paying you $11.17. It costs more to take care of the customer than it is you're collecting. You familiar with these? The cell phones? The minimum bill I see for average for just a basic cell phone plan starts at $25. What's more important, having sewer or having a cell phone? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Cronin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So comment submitted by Joyce Mallon. on Motley Landing Drive. My questions are to understand the proposed revised utility fees, rates, and charges. Why is the county charging fees for sewer service when I already pay HRSD, HRUBS a monthly fee for wastewater? Please explain what the proposed monthly equipment fee and monthly sewer service fees cover, and if they are replacing the services that HRSD, HRUBS is currently providing. If these proposed fees are not replacing services already provided by HRSD, then please explain how they are different, why they are necessary, and what the benefit is to the county citizen affected by the ordinance to amend Chapter 19. Those are all the comments submitted.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions for Ms. Legg? She ran off on us. Dr. Orth?
Yeah, how soon are these AMIs going to be fully implemented? I know I talk with, staff that I see regularly, and I know we're in that process. I know they're working on the software and the towers and all that, and they're doing the assessments, but when do we actually see boots on the ground putting the AMIs in?
So they have already started ordering the meters. They have told us that implementation should be about October. So October, I would assume October through the end of the year will be the process. We're going to try and go a route at a time so that, because it's not going to be as easy as an overnight switch. So our crew's still going to have to hand read meters. So they're going to start with one route and make sure everything is communicating the way that it should. So I would anticipate that it would take a little bit of time for us to get the whole thing done, but they've told us October.
Yeah, I think it might be good when they are being fully implemented, when people see what's happening to compare their bills, so that there may be, a good educational program to explain what's going on, and that once a member gets an AMI, they can actually log in very quickly and see what their usages are. What we don't want is issues that might relate to a problem Mr. Bazzani had with a constituent, that all of a sudden they went, whoa, where's this bill coming from? But if these people can see their usage, it may kind of resolve that situation. The other was, are these AMIs tamperable? I mean, I know that we've had some issues with some people when their water is turned off, that these people are able to do some things with their, manipulate.
I am not sure how they differ in that respect, but I can find out. And with regards to the marketing, because the contract with the company was signed before I moved over to utilities, I've reached out to the software company yesterday, actually, to learn a little bit more about the customer side of it so that we can start that education campaign prior to them getting that bill.
Do we know of other localities that you can at least learn from their experience about the AMIs that might give you a heads up of what to expect?
That I do not know. Do we know of?
I don't think they're in Virginia, but maybe one they're implementing right now. We can find out. Because I know there's a lot of discussion in some of the other localities having the same issues we have, which is, reader meters and looking at implementing the same thing we're doing, input of AMIs. But it would be great to understand, how, if localities have had it, the experience that they've had, that we can maybe learn from it. It might just be helpful.
Anyone else? All right, there's an ordinance on page 94.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Or Ms. Steele?
Mr. Hutson?
Yes.
Mr. Chriscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bazzani? Mr. Nicosia?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson? Dr. Orth? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to our regular agenda. First item is a resolution to accept and appropriate a grant award for the Virginia Marine Resource Commission Grant Program. Ms. Callaway.
Good evening. So tonight for your consideration, we have a resolution to accept and appropriate grant funds that have been awarded to the county through the Virginia Marine Resources Commission grant. This grant is to fund the project to remove the derelict vessels at the Perrin Wharf that we have discussed before. The bid was for $35,000. That was the amount of grant funds that we requested and were awarded. So there is a resolution on page 103 of your packet.
So moved.
All right, Mr. Bazzani, do you have a question?
Yes, just comment, actually. It's a good thing this is happening, because one of those derelict boats is leaking oil right now into the water. And there was a constituent that was severely fined for his boat just leaking maybe half a gallon of oil or gas into the water. But this particular one is leaking drop by drop and polluting. So it's a good thing that's coming out and cleaning up our waters.
Dr. Orth, did you have a comment? All right.
Ready for that? Okay. Mr. Chriscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bazzani?
Yes.
Mr. Nicosia?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Dr. Orth? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson? Motion carries.
Next. When we get to you, we'll ask that.
I made the wrong mark on the crossword puzzle there.
I know.
Marked off this wrong letter.
That's the problem. Ms. Cronin, can you sit on this side starting next month?
She passed the bar yesterday.
And it sounds like Ted didn't pass the bar. He stopped at the bar. Okay, let's go to, what's this called tonight? Board appointments. Thank you, Mr. Wilmot. Oh, geez. Do we have anybody for social services? Yes, we do.
We'll do them en masse.
Well, let's get names out first. It's
It's the one I called you about, Dr. Worth.
Kathy Phillips.
Can you explain maybe to the board about why you thought this was a good move?
She has a lot of expertise in this field, and at the Board of Social Services meeting, we had the list, and the committee of the Board of Social Services met and discussed and went over these individuals, and this is the name they wished that I would bring to you for appointment.
The other was, she's a woman.
Yes.
And there are apparently 7 males, but now we have 6 males and a woman. I think you were suggesting that this was a good addition because of having another.
Yeah, it's 6 and 1 now. This will start to balance it out.
But she's the best qualified, so that shouldn't come into it whatsoever.
But yeah, women do have, in many cases, a very different opinion.
Sure.
And can understand sometimes things that I know I have a hard time.
Okay, Kathy Phillips would like to be on it. Do you want to nominate her?
I'll nominate her.
Okay. The Clean and Green Advisory, Denise and Leanne.
I'll make the motion to reappoint both.
Okay, Historical Committee, we have no volunteers for Petsworth?
Still no volunteers, and two, I believe Ms. Cronin's email recently about maybe we need a little bit of flexibility about representation on some of these boards, because I think there is an interested party in another district that could serve, so it's just something I think we should address at some point. But unfortunately, I cannot seem to locate a volunteer in Petsworth.
Okay. They don't like their history. Local Emergency Planning Committee, Mr. Meyer would like to be on it again.
I'll make the motion to reappoint Mr. Meyer and Ms. Parker to the LEPC.
Okay. Do we need both? Okay. Tourism Committee, we have Miss Ash.
Make the motion we appoint Ms. Melissa Ash.
Okay. And then we have Wetlands Board in Chesapeake Bay.
Make the motion that we appoint Mr. Christopher Lee on the Wetlands Board.
And that would be to alternate, because we have a vacant position for Petsworth.
That would be the alternate, correct.
He wouldn't be the primary?
He would be the alternate.
Is there a vacancy in the primary?
Yes,
Why can't we make him the primary?
because it's for Petsworth District.
Yep, Mr. Gibson said we should kind of be flexible on these.
But we can't
Yes,
with some
they're
things.
too hard to find.
Yeah, I think we'd have to amend the
We have to deal,
bylaws.
I think it's an important thing that we do look at the bylaws And I think it's time to make that change because of the difficulty in finding people from the districts, and I think it should make any difference. We should find the most qualified people that want to be on these committees and change our bylaws for each of these groups.
But I think you know, for some of the committees, I know for the longest time we were having difficulties finding somebody on public utilities. I can understand someone in the Petsworth district might not want to be on public utilities considering they don't have water up there. So, I mean, I think we need, before we make wholesale changes to bylaws, I think we need to look at what we're looking at in the bylaws, because they were written for a reason.
Well,
I think, yeah, to have adequate representation from all the districts, but maybe we can talk to our council about amending it as sort of a right of first refusal, that the first preference is from that district, and if there are no volunteers, then the second option is to have someone from the other parts of the county.
Dr. Orth.
But, given the utility example, someone could move into the county, live in utilities, but have great experience and could add a lot to the utilities. So that's why I'm thinking that, you know, if we change the utilities bylaws, it means that we can draw from a greater, you know, because there are a lot of retired people that come in, and there's also a lot of veterans that may have experience in these areas, because we've had such a hard time filling those committee assignments. So I'm just saying
I'm just saying that we need to be careful in making changes, and not change for change's sake.
Right, and I agree with that.
In this case, I believe that Mr. Lee's probably going to be the only waterfront owner on the Wetlands Board.
I would say not.
No.
No. But I mean, right now, if it's a vacant position, that means although he's alternate now, he can still serve, so it's the same thing. So, but right now, it's for alternate.
So he can go to the meetings then?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Okay, we've got a list, and all of them are seconded, I believe. Okay, they weren't all seconded. Which ones need to be seconded? Okay, anybody want to second all of them? Okay, all in favor as presented?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we'll move to county attorney items. Ms. Cronin? Mr. Wilmot?
I'm still happy to be here. If there's some committees or boards you want me to look at their residency, just let me know, and we can come back.
This is a bylaw issue?
Usually it's bylaws that y'all approve. Historical committee, the public utilities committee, they're all.
How long were the bylaws established? How old are they?
Some of them for decades or a decade. So, but if you're having trouble recruiting people to be on the boards, then let me know and we can change the requirement that they live in a district.
Gentlemen, is that something you will agree with?
I mean, we need to figure out which committees we're
Yes,
interested in.
which committees?
Well,
Because
right
I don't
now,
think.
it seems the only one that we've had an issue with now, unfortunately for Mr. Gibson, has been the historical committee. There's no way he's not trying. You can tell by what he does in this building that he's trying to find somebody, and there's just not the interest. So I think that's the one we need to look at right now, because everything else I've seen that we have been able to fill.
And I think we are looking at utilities also, and changing the bylaws. Right, and Ms. Lake, yeah, Ms. Lake is shaking her head there. We are looking at the bylaws for utilities.
All of these things should be, take the best qualified candidate regardless of where they came from.
But no, because if you look at, if you look at tourism, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Wilmot, but if you look at tourism, they have different qualifications on what they want brought to the committees. From business owners to, this one is a historical group.
Lodging, dining,
So
restaurants.
a lot of them have different different requested requirements that they want.
And if I can, Mr. Chair, the Historical Committee years ago wanted to increase their size, so they have some additional alternate positions, and they may all be full right now, but they have a flexibility in the size of their group. So the first thing I was going to mention is if there's somebody who is interested who doesn't represent Petsworth, to make sure, first of all, that they're on the volunteer bank, but we would look and see if there's one of those open slots for them.
And I think the thought is that we want the county to be represented countywide. So you want a Petsworth district person, you want a York, and you want people from everywhere, so they have a say so. But if it's not important to the particular committee, and if you're having trouble filling the committee, utilities, historical committee, then you can do away with that requirement. It's just be careful, like Mr. Hutson said. Please be careful.
I agree. I agree. But it seems to me like, excuse me, I didn't put my mic on. It seems to me like where you live is more important than what your qualifications are. Just because you live somewhere doesn't make you more qualified than anybody else.
They're both very important, Mr. Bazzani, extremely important. The qualifications perhaps more important. But where you live is important too, because we wouldn't want all the people to be my neighbors. We'd want them to be representative of the whole county.
Or all of us be from the Gloucester Point district sitting up here making these decisions.
Or somebody from York County because they're the most qualified. There's got to be requirements for being on the committees. Mr. Gibson.
Mr. Chair, if I could just follow up on that. I don't know, I'll leave it to your drafting, but I would suggest that in order to not only get the best qualified, but to get that geographic diversity, to have some sort of language of, the first preference is someone from this district. However, if no willing volunteer is available, then the board may approve a candidate from another area of the county. Something along those lines, but I'll certainly defer to your drafting.
And that's a good point. How long do we maintain that?
Right.
We can't find anybody in 2 meetings, right?
Is there a way to put a limit on the time? Is it, if we take 6 months and we can't find that qualified Petsworth or York District person to fill a seat, I mean, is that something we can do as well? I don't know.
Yes, sir. I think that Mr. Gibson's suggestion is that first preference is district diversity, but let's not tie our hands.
Yeah.
Let's be able to fill the positions. So that can be done, but I'm going to start with the Historical Committee and Utilities Committee, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is board and commission report. Did we vote on that? Yes, we did. Okay. I'm just making sure because, yeah, we're at Ted's. Excuse me, Ms. Wilmot. Board and commission reports.
I'll just briefly, I know I'm taking up a lot of airtime tonight, but I just want to say that I am on the historical committee now with Mr. Hedrick's departure. I'm really impressed with the committee. I'm really impressed with what Mr. Kelly is doing. There have been some great programs. He's just secured some very valuable grants. I think we're going to see really great improvements to the museum. It's already a wonderful museum, but I think it's really going to take a step up. So I'm really excited about leveraging the great history that we have, and I think we have great leadership in Mr. Kelly. And the committee members are all engaged and committed. So I'm really pleased to serve on that committee.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Next item is supervisor discussion. Dr. Orth.
Okay, so we've heard from a number of people regarding the Sinclair property. I'm just throwing that out as to whether this board is willing to listen to those comments and do something or what. I've seen the emails. We've discussed this with some of the members. What can we do?
Mr. Wilmot?
Well, it's hard because this board is funny. You own property and you can do whatever you want with it unless someone objects, okay. So you saw the emails from Ms. Ducey Ortiz. There's apparently, I think, no specific proposal with reference to the concern that was raised, at least not as far as application is concerned. So I think it's incumbent upon the board to respond to the concerns through perhaps the county administrator, where we are in the process. But I'm not sure the board needs to or should weigh in on anything at this point, although Ms. Ducey Ortiz is going to stand and correct me.
I guess right now, the Captain Sinclair property is, from a zoning perspective, is treated as a park. There's various accessory uses in the park. I believe the people that spoke tonight are concerned about some of those uses that the park managers are allowing at the park. And so, you know, under zoning, our definition of park is very, very broad and includes, you know, cultural, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's literally one sentence, and that it's something that's open to the public and for historic, cultural, natural, you know, kind of all-encompassing things. The one concern I had when I heard that comment is I know that one of the ideas is to have an office there for nature-based counseling. Because it's a park with nature, I thought that would be a consistent use. When they mentioned that they couldn't be there with the crew team, again, we typically don't get into how a park manages itself, you know. So, but that, I thought that was I hadn't heard that before. The housing at the Captain Sinclair property specifically says for staff. Who somebody hires as staff is not something we get involved in. There are other houses that are single-family houses that are not part of the park, and those are existing lots of record that are, there's existing house, and then they're proposing to put, I think, 2 to 3 more homes there. Those would just be treated as single-family homes.
But they won't be for staff, some of them will be for residents that will be moving.
No, it'll be for staff of the business.
The ones on the property, so the existing house and the pool house, they're proposing apartments in there, and those are for staff. Now, in the email that Mr. Lawrence sent, he said that some of those staff may be some of the veterans that are hired. So, but again, when we issue a zoning permit, we don't classify who somebody can hire. So.
Ms. Steele. I wouldn't run
I'm
off.
trying to think of a comparison. If we were having members of the public come in and complain about Machicomico, and if it wasn't a zoning issue, then we would say you should probably go talk to DCR because that's who manages that park and they are the ones with the policies and things. We do have representation, 2 seats on the PAA. I would assume those meetings have a citizen comment period. And it seems like that correspondence from my office could be saying you should go direct these to the PAA board and not to this board, unless there was a specific zoning issue. Right. And right now, there isn't one.
And
that we're
that
aware
was the suggestion of who you discussed this with. Right now, from the zoning standpoint, we've made sure they followed all their zoning rules. So it's really the PAA's board, and they've been notified now that there's these concerns. So it's actually the PAA that I suggest that these people talk to start, because we don't normally regulate like a business. I don't like that you make wheels, I want you to make tires. And I can't go down to the park and tell them I want them to do oystering and not crabbing. If they want to do both of them, and it's something they're allowed to do, we normally don't get into their business. But it is a park, and I think that's where the confusion is.
It is being designated as a park run by the PAA, because, you know, I guess when I think of a park, I think of like Machicomico and, you know, all the state parks. This is a different agency administering a park, right?
Correct,
And
there's
so-
authority
That's exactly right.
that has rights given by the state. And they maintain open space and for public access.
And the only the park definition doesn't, it just says open to the public.
And being the rep for the PAA, when I first heard, when it was first presented, the Meridian Group, and it's changed names because that was a real estate holding at the time, but it's still Meridian something. I contacted the Moores to let them know to be in contact with the PAA. When the crew team went down to Sinclair Landing, I was the one that moved them down there. When, as soon as the PAA was donated that property, right after that is when we moved down there. The GRA has been down there and the crew team's been down there for over, I think it's been closer to 12 years actually, that they've been rowing out of that facility. They need, I mean, and let me back up. I've had all three of my kids rode. Two of them rode in college. So I'm very familiar with the property, I'm familiar with the organization, I'm familiar with everything. Where we are now is they need to go and contact the PAA and let their voices be heard there. When it was first presented and it's been brought up at PAA meetings, that Meridian would schedule their work day around the kids' practices, because the students have practice or have classes before they have practice. And they were willing to do that. Tonight was the first time I'd heard that they couldn't be there at certain times. Because I was adamant that the kids, while you had people there, they needed to have times when it was just the crew team. So I don't know what else other than presenting their concerns to the PAA board. And the PAA meets Friday.
So I just want to make sure that with the constituents that came today asking for a town hall, the bottom line is that this board has really no authority over the PA, right? Or do we?
Yes, I think we do,
I
and I
just
think we
want
don't.
to do what's right, because.
I'm the rep, and Mr. Chriscoe's the alternate. So we do have representation there. But it is, as, I can't remember if Mr. Wilmot said it or Mr. Baines, they own the property. The PAA owns the property. So, Mr. Gibson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. But first, I would say, of course, I don't want to stand in the way of anybody helping veterans who are struggling with substance abuse, struggling with mental health issues. They have served our country, and I don't want to interfere with that in any way at all. However, it does strike me as an unusual juxtaposition of a counseling center in a recreation area. I'm baffled by how placing a counseling center in a park complies with the zoning. That doesn't seem to make sense with me. You'd think you would have the recreation, the crew, the boating, the kayaking, the fishing, but then counseling services, I want them to get the counseling, but is that a consistent use?
So, again, we're not the people that have proposed any of this. It's the people who are down there working with both the PAA and Mr. Knott, who's the one who does the veteran work.
Right.
But a lot of it's around them getting skills as watermen.
Well, the counseling center is proposed to be in the
house.
It's not there yet. They haven't gotten a zoning permit for that, but that is a proposed use because it's a nature-based counseling. And I saw that is a thing, actually people taking clients out into nature to work with them. It's just like our therapy, there's a nature-based counseling. So that's how it was proposed to me as an accessory use to the park. Just like as Ms. Steele mentioned, like Machicomico, they're going to have a bed and breakfast in there. So that's a commercial use of the farmhouse that they propose to have within the state park. But it's, they're a nonprofit, but they're proposing it as a bed and breakfast separate from the park operations.
Well, the crew organization, I appreciate the further information. The crew organization provides a wonderful service for our community, a positive activity for our students. My son rode last year. He's taken this year off, but I'm familiar with the area, not as familiar as Mr. Hutson. But I would support some forum for parents and interested parties and citizens to weigh in on this proposal, and if there's a way for all the parties to peacefully coexist, that would be great. But there are, I think, some safety concerns that would need to be addressed. We unfortunately hear, and this is the exception, and I'm not trying to label a group. I'm a veteran myself, but a man burned himself alive in front of the embassy. There are people who are struggling with these issues, struggling with addiction, that do pose some risk sometimes. And you have children as young as 13 at this facility. And mixing veterans who are struggling with these legitimate, serious, terrible issues with young people may not be the best mix. And we've got to find a way to serve these veterans, but also make sure that the crew can continue their positive work. So I would strongly support some form of public forum for this issue to be resolved.
Mr. Woodman?
But is there a proposal? Is there an application?
For the counseling center?
Yes.
No.
Okay, well then,
So that they
we're
have
not
a-
even there yet. We don't have a proposal, we don't have an application.
Maybe they think they don't need one.
Well, I would think they
Well,
do.
one of the points is, and again, you know, this is just historical information, and Mr. Hutson and Mr. Chriscoe would know this also, is that they've owned this property for a long time, but there is no operating money to maintain this. So it's done by volunteers. So right now, the people that maintain to keep it kind of cleared, where you see it cleared, are the parents of the crew team and such. So they're down there keeping what we see cleared. It isn't that they pay people to do it. And then, as Mr. Wilmot said, the PAA is looking at multi-things doing down there, trying to get different grants to see what they can do. I can't tell you which ones are going to take hold and which ones aren't. They come in, they apply. Sometimes they come forward with a site plan or with a proposal. Sometimes they don't.
Well, I just want to clarify, there's not a proposal, there's an approved zoning permit for a redevelopment of the existing house for multifamily apartments, and then the redevelopment of the pool house for apartments, a bait shop, and something else. So they have
pavilion.
approval. So the office that's going to be in the building is supposedly for this counseling center. I did ask, it's not like people aren't going to live there and be counseled, because that's a different use. And they said, no, it's just an office, and we are going to be treating our clients there because they're a nature-based counseling center.
So, in line with Mr. Gibson, I'm kind of in agreement with him. Right now, we took a tour of that facility today, and the majority of the use right now, if you go back there, there's lots of boats out there from the GRC. They basically looks like they own the place, because that's really the only piece, the only equipment that's there. I too have a concern that and I heard too, and that's what I heard, but it may be other people other than veterans there that have the same issues. We don't know. There should be some kind of vetting or discussion of this before this organization moves forward. I think safety is, when you have kids there mixing with adults, it's a little different scenario.
And just remember, again, all these are concerns that we can try to go back, but through the zoning, we only have certain things we can control, but it's open to the public. So there'll be at some point in time that the crew could be down there, that anybody could show up down there who wanted to argue with them about fishing on the pier, or they didn't like where they parked their cars. It's an open to the public. So right now the crew's about the only one down there, but as they put more facilities in, it could be some conflicts with other public uses that they want to complain about what the rowers are doing, or on our side, more concerned about who's down there while these children are down there, and how do you control that? And again, the park's not ours, and it's because the PA designated it a park that this zoning's happening. If they designated it something different, then we'd have the different rules. Right now, they're calling it a park. The apartments are for park employees, and they're going to have an office for this outdoor counseling.
I'm going to ask the question, what would be different if it was a halfway house?
That wouldn't be permitted in that zoning district.
Will not be
Would
permitted?
not, so it's zoned C2, which is a residential district. We allow parks in pretty much every district. So parks are a permitted use in all districts. So when they came in for the original, actually, I think it was a permit for the crew team, that was a designation as a park. And then they've been kind of slowly going forward with that designation as they get funding. The housing, again, I just wondered, the housing is separate. So they own multiple parcels out there, and it's actually an old subdivision called Land's End. It was a platted subdivision, so there's actually platted right-of-ways and lots. And so they did get a grant for housing, and they are proposing to build workforce housing on some of those lots that are buildable. They're pretty wet out there, and so those are separate from the park issue, and those are just going to be single-family homes. Now, my understanding is they may rent them to veterans. So,
I think we should be very careful with the PAA's proposals and vet them very carefully.
That's where I think Mr. Gibson and I are in agreement.
I understand some of the concerns, but as Mr. Baines alluded to, this is a public access parcel. So while we're going to vet the people that are coming there for whatever reason, I don't know how you're gonna vet anybody who comes down here, once they get their bait, tackle, and pavilion built, you're gonna vet every person that comes down there. I mean, you're gonna have someone standing at the door going, I need to see your credentials? I mean, if it's a public access parcel, park, whatever you wanna call it, the vetting is an issue that I don't know how we're going to resolve.
If I may.
It's more of a behavioral issue.
Well,
not
my
more
point
vetting.
is the use. If it's a counseling center, or if it's residential, or if it's, not to vet every person who comes down to use it, but to vet the use, the proposed use, and to give this moniker of a park and then bless it with lots of uses. I think we should be careful, and if we're talking about a counseling center, that's not a park. If we're talking about residential units, that's not a park. So I think we should be very careful in our going forward.
It's not, my understanding. First of all, the counseling, it's an office for counseling. So that they haven't, from what I understand today, the building has a hole in the roof, so I don't believe they're using it right now, but,
It's not being used right now.
but that idea is to redevelop it for these multiple uses that are associated with the park.
All it would take is one uncomfortable child. One. You'll see how many parents will show up.
So what does the board want to do? There's nothing, I mean, do y'all want to have?
I think it's incumbent upon you and I, Mr. Hutson, following the PAA meeting this Friday, to update the board at our work session.
Right. But
Because there's a lot of other items that have to be fleshed out before this gets to a point that where we're trying to get to tonight. There's a lot of other things that have to happen
There's a
before we
whole
get
lot of things that
Right.
need to be worked out on this. So after Friday, when we get back together, we'll discuss it further if we want to go, how we want to proceed. We're still on supervisor discussion.
One more comment.
Okay.
So, and this is a hypothetical, what if the inmates at our local jail want to play soccer, and they're out there playing soccer along with all the other kids playing soccer? Is that a use that's allowable under our park definition? Can inmates from our local jail play soccer? That they're nonviolent, but they're playing out, they want to play a game of soccer out there? Is that any different than what we're doing now on this particular piece of property?
It'll just be skins and orange shirts.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
I think they haven't, just as that specific group, there's an internal policy. We have trustees cut grass in our parks. So they do go to our parks and they are supervised. They don't do recreational activities. They, however, do not cut grass on school property. So I think there are some internal policies that they have, but I'm not aware of any zoning or any legal restrictions on that.
Excuse me?
Isn't that a budget work session, though?
Yeah,
Chair.
You're going to update us, though.
I just bring myself up to speed. The person bringing this counseling center in, that's Mr. Knott, right?
No.
Dan Knott?
Mr. Knott is currently there. He's the one that is, if you're familiar with the property at all, he's the one that's in the brick house when you go in. And the houses, if I'm not mistaken, that's where they're looking at building the single-family homes over near the brick house. And in the main house with the statues on top, that's where they're looking at remodeling and putting one or two, 3 apartments up top, and then 2 apartments over the boathouse.
I'm familiar with Mr. Knight's house, so I was just making myself familiar with the property.
So, I'm just curious, how many employees are the PA going to run this park? 20, 25? What are they doing all day long? And who are these employees?
Well, that's not a question that we are able to ask the PAA. It's just like, it's not like a question you can ask any entity that comes here to open up shop in Gloucester County. The PAA is going to operate a bait shop, a tackle facility. They will need to maintain that property, which is being done strictly by volunteers, some by the crew, some by a neighbor up the street who drives his lawnmower down the road to go over there to cut the grass. So this is a different entity, but there are things that have to be worked out by the PAA before we really discuss this any further, because the PAA is not to a point where they've mentioned it, but it has not been brought to planning and zoning to say, this is what we're going to for sure do. And I think we have to get to that point before we worry about everything else.
But it has been discussed, PAA, at least certain members, about having requirements, stipulations on who are the employees that can live there. In the event that that happens.
Okay, fair enough.
Anything else for supervisor discussion? Mr. Chriscoe.
Just one. Thank you, Mr. Hutson. With the actions taken last night by the board, I just wanted to point out that we have a budget work session scheduled for March the 13th, then our town hall on the 21st, and then, of course, our public hearings on budget and tax rates. But then we have 2 more additional budget work sessions. Does the board think we're going to need all of these, being that we have put ourselves where we are not going to contemplate anything other than the current tax rates? Do y'all think we'll need all these budget? We don't have to have it tonight. I mean, we can talk about it again next Wednesday. But, because I know we're gonna at least need one of these, but I just thought that we might want to have discussion or do that. And Mr. Hutson and I will probably be prepared for the 13th if you want any update on the PAA, but I would figure we would do that on the 19th after we send the school board out of our joint meeting to finish up our business.
I say we'll add that to the 13th agenda to have just an update on the PAA's decision on Sinclair. Dr. Orth.
So, yeah, let's see where we are on the 13th and how far we move forward, and whether we agree or disagree. Any additional meetings may be or may not be necessary. So let's get through the 13th.
Yeah.
And if it looks like we've made good progress in that particular situation, that we have to have the town hall and the public meetings and all that, we can see whether we need the subsequent meetings after that from that meeting.
Well, 2 things. What progress can we make or not make? I'm just asking.
It's up to the board in terms of its budget.
I think we'll at least have a town hall.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna have the town hall, we've gotta have the public hearing, and we're gonna have the joint meeting. But other than that, all we have to do is approve the budget.
Right. I mean, given that
our hands are tied.
Yeah, right, because we approved the rate at 58.3, so we can't do an awful lot. Except shell games.
But even if we play your shell games, all we're doing is approving the lump budget. So, but I did have, your shell games threw me off. There was something there. There's 2 things.
Well, I didn't do shell.
Historically, Ms. Callaway, historically, Ms. Callaway has, and their staff has presented budget books for us to work on. Do you see a need for printed copies or PDFs sent to us, and then we print whatever is desired to save a couple trees?
PDF is fine with me.
So we all want printed copies?
Oh, is that what that meant?
Yeah.
PDF.
So that's it. We only have one more thing. We'll see everybody on the 13th. So moved. Second. All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.